science fiction. We make no guarantees, however, how long it will remain fiction. Fiction. Fiction.
Recurring salutations, Cognonauts, and welcome to Exofathom, the show where we dare to explore the unfathomable. I am your host tonight. I am Mike, and it's a pretty special show. We're pretty much at the end of 2021, so I kind of wanted to look back on everything that we've done this year. And tonight, I am joined with my two lovely co-hosts, Nick and Ayla. How y'all doing?
Hey, I am good. I ate a little bit too close to the show, so I'm feeling a little lethargic, but I'll pick up my pep. Don't worry. I got my tea right here.
I drank a little bit too much before the show, so I'm feeling a little clumsy over my words.
No worries.
Ayla, how you doing?
Oh, I think I lamented a little too much before the show, so I'm coming in a little trepidatious, a little anxious. I don't know.
You scared? Are you worried?
A little bit. No, I'm fine.
Feelings of dread.
Oh, I don't know, man. It's weird. It's been a weird year, and I think that at the end of the year, we look back at the year, and so I'm re-experiencing the weird year as I prepare for the next year. But that's okay. Is what it is.
Yeah. No, I got you. For me, it's felt like 2020 has gone on for 2 years. It's just one long 2020.
Oh, yeah. Well, and then this upcoming year, it's 2022, as in TOO, like also.
Oh, God. Don't put it like that. I was like, 222s have been really kind to me. Like, the 3 repetitions of 2 have been cool. But if you go 222, then, I feel like it could be a train wreck.
Ooh. Must consult the stars. Let's get an astrologist on here.
Yeah, I know. But yeah.
Or
so tonight I
numerologist.
kind of wanted to just both get an astrologist and a numerologist.
Yes.
Yeah, I kind of wanted to look back at all the episodes we did. We actually done quite a bit, 53 episodes in total, including some of the exopics that we had. So that adds up to like what, an hour and a half for like 40 of those or 45 of those, and then 30 to 45 minutes of the other ones. So that's quite a bit of time we've talked. So just off the top of your head, first question of the night, what was your favorite episode that you can remember?
There's a few for me. I've listened to quite a few of the past episodes for the last year. Always trying to listen to see where I can improve and tweak things. So I got to say, I really enjoyed the culmination of the Gateway experience. I know that's kind of an obvious answer, but we finally finished it this year. And it took us a while to get there. It took 9 episodes for us to go through that whole document. And I feel like we just got better and better as the episodes progressed. And I kind of lament the fact that we didn't do them all in one chunk, because you can kind of tell the market difference of us getting used to podcasting and all of that stuff. So I would have to say definitely the Gateway experience for me. I wish that we could redo it in some ways, just to have it like consistently in like one long, 15-hour block. But I'm glad that we have the 9 episodes, and it's on our playlist on our YouTube channel. So if you want to check those out, you can.
Well, you made a special playlist just for it.
Oh,
it
yeah.
Shows you how engaged I am with our channel.
Yeah. All of the CIA stuff is in its own playlist. I try to create the playlists on our channel just so that people have a, if they're into the mythology stuff, they can go to that. If they're into the government stuff, they can go to that.
Yeah, nice.
Mm-hmm.
Well done, man.
Doing
Ayla.
things.
I know, right? Ayla, how about you?
Well, yeah, I've taken a minute to just say thank you, Nick, for doing all of the background legwork on the logistics side of things. Appreciate it. And I think my favorite episode had to have been the hero's journey. I just thought that that was such a fun midway discussion, and it was fascinating. It was concepts that I wasn't familiar with, of interest from the creative artistic angle, and hilarious. I just remember laughing a lot during that episode, and just having good discussions that kind of touched on a lot of other stuff too. So
Is that the episode where we had Ben as a special guest?
yes, it's also the
Ah.
episode where we devised an entire storyline based on somebody just wanting Cheetos.
Oh, that's right. That was a fun episode. That was a lot of fun. I think I went through like a 12-pack of Newcastle during that show.
It was a long one. I think it was like
Yeah.
2.5
You and
hours.
Ben, I think.
Yeah.
There was a race, a unspoken race.
Yeah, you guys are on like some other level, but it was good because like the story started really spilling out towards the end, and I was like, dude, I might write this.
Didn't a bear pop up somewhere that wanted Cheetos as well?
Bandit gang at some point, the preacher's wife, the preacher's daughter. There was
Yep,
a lot
there
of
was
moving
like-
parts.
Yep. Getting lost in the middle of the
A
forest.
hobo that offered you a coupon for free Cheetos.
Oh,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
Stopping by like a broken down car or something. That was a good
Yeah.
episode. And then we
Mhm.
tied that to like Star Wars and stuff too.
Yeah.
Somehow.
Well, and I think, yeah, you're right, because that was actually one of the best parts about it for me, was that like we started talking about like these favorite movies that we watch, these iconic stories, and it's like it was getting to the heart of what sparks optimism and interest and hope for us, you know, when thinking about one movie versus another. It's like resonating with something. And so having like the Joseph Campbell kind of background of the hero's journey and the who, what, when, where, why, that was just really cool to just break down and talk about.
Yeah, those philosophical groundings and underpin or foundations to what is now modern mythology. That stuff
Yeah.
matters, and what moves people, inspires them to emotion, really.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think there's anything much higher than being moved by a story than to emotion.
Oh, yeah. And you know what's funny is that episode occurred a couple weeks before this massive injury that I had this year. And I remember being in the ER at one point thinking about that story and like, well, I guess this is the beginning of a hero's quest. I'm going down a dark, dark road and we'll see where we end up, you know?
At least it's the start. I was a little worried. You're gonna be like, well, that's the end of the quest for Cheetos. I'm never gonna have Cheetos again.
Like, that's just, yeah, let's just say I did die a little that day and had that thought. And then I came back and it was like, oh, do-over. You're doing this again. All right, let's go.
Round 2. Yeah, no, this year has definitely presented, I think, everybody with a few scars and souvenirs for their trials and tribulations of 2021, or even the past couple of years. Right.
I'd co-sign that.
For me, though, I think I really liked that hyper reality episode.
That was
Like,
a good one.
I was moved to think pretty quickly. Like most of the time, I don't like thinking quickly. I just kind of like to chill and not have to think about anything. Ideally, like if I could just live life of just working and then being motionless and thoughtless until I have to work again, that'd be perfect.
It would be nice, right? And just shut everything off. Yeah.
Right? Yeah. just shut everything down and then come back. But that hyper reality episode just made me feel like even if we're not living in a simulation, even if we're not just, code running, we have our own code running all the time in life.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like ideally you're living within hyper reality, and then all of the ways that life rocks your boat around, or the interpersonal dramas or tragedies or what have you, is the like that shaking away from hyper reality.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think that though that episode was pretty decent. It was a cerebral one, and I've actually enjoyed our sort of more cerebral episodes as of late, getting more into the sort of like psychology, philosophy angles. Those have been a lot of fun. And I think what was important about the hyperreality one is that there was kind of an antidote in the idea of authenticity. Even, the concept of hyperreality being somewhat of an inevitability of human progress, or maybe the just eventuality of reality itself. But being able to inject authenticity into that to sort of mediate some of the ill effects. I thought that was a good concept.
Yeah, no, I think that's like the moral of that podcast. Like if we like wrapped it all up in 15 seconds, it's like authenticity can help a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, for sure. My plan, I guess, was to read down some episodes that we did, and then just kind of chat about it, or if anything comes to mind.
Yeah, for sure. I'm trying to remember some of these, but I think we'll jog the memory.
Yeah. So I'm just gonna probably read the first half page that I have. I think what I want to do is go like first half page, second page, and then the third page we can wrap it up because it's only like a quarter page. So that second page might be the most dense. Who knows? So the beginning of the year started off with Sun and Moon myth. So like the I guess the Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde sort of thing. And how this kind of plays out in multiple mythologies. The only reason why I can remember this much about it is because I hosted it. And obviously, out of us three, I'm the best host.
Obviously.
No doubt about it.
Thank you for playing into my narcissism and ego. It helps out immensely. The second one is Inch Time Foot Gem. That was an exobit, I believe, done by Ayla.
Yep.
Awesome.
We got Big Mike tuning in
Foot
too. Just wanted to say what's up, man.
Oh wait.
Hello. Now he went away.
Oh,
Wait.
Yeah, he'll be back.
wait, who popped in? Who left?
Big Mike was in the chat for a second.
And he's back.
Oh,
No, he's
exactly.
Gone. Well, an Inch Time Foot Gem, that was kind of funny because we were doing all of the exo bits in the beginning, and sometimes we would do these cones, these Zen cones, to make you think and ponder and kind of stretch your brain a little bit. I have to admit, I kind of missed the little exo bits, but I think we might revisit them down the road. I think
we just have to redo because we fell on the cones a lot, and so
we did, and I think the
kind of a chore.
Yeah, no, that's true. But I think we were talking too long. Like we were trying to be really stringent about it being only 30 minutes, and then we would keep dragging it out, and we were like, well, So to the listeners, if you miss the cones, let us know. We might bring them back.
For us, these episodes too can take quite a bit of research. I know for me, I don't always start off with one single topic I want to approach, but multiple topics. So I end up sinking hours, sometimes days, into just trying to figure out what topic I even want to explore. And
Same.
So you add that to just like was like a 4-day production cycle, really, of researching, finding out poignant things, synthesizing, getting into talking points. That can become a job in itself, at least a 16-hour a week job within itself.
Trust. I was quite the fan of moving to once a week. But I was just thinking in terms of like maybe doing exo bits where they're not prepared, where it is based on the cones or something else like an aphorism, or maybe, I don't know, like 300 word or less excerpts, and we just chat about something, because sometimes
or a
it's
news
nice.
article or something.
Yeah, just having like no preliminary mumbo jumbo. Just let's talk and discuss, because that could be kind of fun. But it'd have to be spontaneous because we have lives.
So I can code something where if you just gave me like a list of links, both of you, and I have my own list of links, create a random selector, I guess, of you to just pick one of those links, and then we could talk about that specific link, and that could be like our exhibit.
Yeah,
Ooh,
that might be a good call.
Because
then at least the information, because even some of the exobits, I think the ship of Theseus was an exobit, and that was that was pretty heady.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so, I mean, like, yeah, the exhibits were good. I enjoyed doing them, but doing twice a week was just, I could see my quality going down when we were
Same.
doing twice a week for sure.
Oh, definitely.
So if
Like,
we bring
because-
another episode, I think it'll have to be something we can go on autopilot with.
Yeah, unless you know, we get sponsors and all that fun stuff.
Hey,
And this
if we
could
make
be
a
the
full-time
full-time
job.
full-time
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Money, 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 money.
Mhm.
Oh yeah, you need that money to pay rent, right? Keep the lights on, all that fun stuff.
Yes. To cover
oh,
the
yeah.
expenditure of energy of thought. Because, you know, you mentioned research, but I don't know about you, but I do probably spend as much time reading and stuff as I do like thinking about it. Because like some of our episodes might start with the sun and the moon myth, but then it's like there's always that one thing that kind of like brings it back to the present day or current situations or some other random philosophy that we covered in a past episode. And I think those linkages happen because yeah, it's interesting stuff, and you just sit there and you ponder and you're reading, and it's always cool to see what the two of you come up with in response to questions or thoughts that I'm like, this is a crazy thought, and then you're like, actually I thought that too, and I'm like, what? And so
Yeah.
fun.
I think, yeah, the, shit, I lost it, I think.
You're
Sorry.
fine. I like to I like to
Curse
think
past
of
the
this,
10 minutes.
I like to think of our conversations as like a three-way chess match, because it does become kind of difficult to first off like construct a conversation amongst three people, and then to bounce these ideas off of each other and find different points where the conversation doesn't become a argument per se, but where we can pull the best ideas out of each other, which requires mediation and pre-game planning, of course, and then bringing the topics and then being able to pivot on a dime as far as keeping the conversation flowing like a river.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Mike knows I'm a honey badger. I'll fight you. No, I'm just kidding.
Hey, you
Not
looked
that cute.
really mad about that whole Mario Party thing the other day. And I'm not apologizing for anything.
Nor should
were,
you.
We're not
yeah,
talking
you
about
were the
that.
target.
We're
Oh, yeah,
not talking
see?
us off topic, man.
What I will say is that when I'm doing an episode, I swear, like I'll take a screenshot next time and send it to you guys. I have like 20 tabs open, and what I like to do when I start episodes is I'll do the word web thing, and it just for me it helps me kind of structure the episode. So I'll do like the word in the middle of a page, draw the circle, and then connect ideas to it, and then create this little web, and then number each item. So that way I kind of know the way the show is going to structure. I found that doing that for me has been the best way for me to formulate information. But I would wonder what your guys' processes are, because everybody kind of formulates information differently.
You're so much better at it than I. Everything for me is like we're operating online in like this crazy volatile stochastic system where I have ideas.
You're in a fugue state. Just
Yeah, I just sitting there, just eyes wide. So I've known. I mean, we've known each other for over a decade, so we know each other pretty well. So I can kind of, before the show starts, predict where the conversation can go.
Mm-hmm.
But there's always like this is what I mean by thinking quickly. You guys think a little bit faster than I guess. And so I'm taking in this new information and trying to branch out the conversations into multiple paths. But by the time you're halfway through your statement, or Ayla's response is halfway through her statement, I'm like pruning off branches of conversation that we can have. And then later on, once we're done with the show, I'm like, shit, I could have brought that up.
All of the
and
things I
could've
could have said.
connected it. Yeah.
No, I know. I do feel that some ways sometimes too. I just have to kind of like, and this has helped me too, because we're being so meta right now. It's a podcast talking about our podcast, but like
To our 33
Hey,
listeners.
hey, you didn't have to bring that up. We could
That's
have just
okay.
kept going.
No, doing it in earnest though, because I think that there is something interesting to share here, and it's like the process. We're all novices at this stuff. We've been only doing it for about a year and a half, almost 2 years in April, I guess. But it's a struggle. It's hard to learn this stuff. You think that you just turn the camera on and start talking. It's definitely not that. I can't tell you how many times I want to just choke myself to death whenever I hear myself say, it drives me crazy. And now it's an auditory tick that you're never going to unhear because
my thing is right. I'll be like, ba-da-da-da-da-da, right?
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Totally.
Do not get me started.
But you pick up on those
thing.
things.
Yeah, I got the thing from Jen Psaki. I was not an person until I started watching press conferences daily, and now I'm an person.
But it used to be such a speech taboo to use those likes, so I'm really trying to train myself out of that. I still fall into it a lot, but I try my best to be conscious of it now because it is very apparent once you notice it.
Those are called, they connect two ideas together. So I used to use the word fuck a lot, like fucking, blah, blah, blah,
Right.
and the fucking thing and fucking. So that used to be my thought connector. So I guess I've improved to the and
yeah,
right
it's better.
and like, maybe, arguably.
But I definitely find that sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, pointed out to me that for some reason, before I'm about to speak, I sometimes go,
oh yeah.
I don't know what the hell is that? I really don't know. And it's funny because ever since he mentioned it, I will catch myself from time to time, and I don't know what that is.
Just did it.
What is that?
Yeah.
I did that purposefully because it's like
Like-
when like I guess I had to listen back and be like, when am I using that? What is that? What function is that serving for my brain?
It's a period,
Yeah,
but it's a period before the sentence you're about to say.
or the gathering of attention. Like a lot of people do the the throat to like pull attention into what they're about to say.
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen multiple podcasters do this as well, especially if they're alone, because as a listener you drift, especially if you're doing something else. So if the podcaster thinks it's something important, what they could do is go clear their throat right before they're about to say the important thing.
Right.
And engage the listener or re-engage them.
Mm-hmm.
Are you engaged, listener? Or no, I should have prefaced it.
Are we training you?
Are we engaged?
Or are you training us? The unspoken consciousness of listeners have somehow created a tulpa telling us what we should and shouldn't do.
Oh
No, I don't know.
God, my nightmares make so much more sense now.
I'm trying to vision that.
So Ayla, what's your process when you're hosting and doing this stuff?
I just did it again. Did you hear that?
Yes. You don't have to bring attention to it.
No, I know. Now it's just there. Like, yeah. To Mike's question, I have actually been trying to change it through this year. So earlier this year, I was much more Virgo about it. I would try to have it. Fuck, I did it again. I would have an outline and I would do the research. Yeah. And I think what I would try to do is start out with like fact or history or story. And then once I lay a foundation, go back and throw in questions and more philosophical ideas or connections and things like that. And then midway through the year, it was kind of funny because both of you would anticipate or bring up really great points midway through the facts. And I was like, well, why don't we just bounce around? So now I still kind of prepare it the same way. I'll research articles and I'll pull quotes and things that I think are really interesting. And after I have like a couple pages of notes, I look back and I'm like, okay, what's the flow here, But then when I get started, I am no longer bearing the lead. I try to introduce like the overall concepts early on, and then I think that kind of has more like conversation. But I don't know. If you liked my episodes in the first half of this year, please leave us a comment. But if you're in favor of the latter half of the year's episodes hosted by moi, then also leave
Subscribe.
a like. Subscribe and say good job. We like it.
Yeah, no, you guys are much better at it as far as formal planning, but I take into mind like the Mike Tyson thing. This I guess more towards like keeping things stochastic and allowing for volatility. We all have a plan until someone responds with something that we don't expect. We all have a plan until we get hit, right? Like you have a fight plan, you have a conversation plan, how conversation might flow, and then all of a sudden we go from talking about hyper reality to talking about pretzel based hamburgers or something, right? Like those derailings that sort of happen, and you have to try to bring that back in, and that takes a bit of improvisation, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you have to be on your feet. Honestly, I go into every episode that's not hosted by me without even looking at the notes. I don't. And it's not that I don't believe you guys make notes. It's just that like I want to be unfettered from the structure of the conversation because I want to kind of follow the way you guys are leading and not maybe anticipate too much. Just for me, because it makes it easier for me to be like an engaged, participant, because I don't know where the conversation's going. So it's kind of fun.
Yeah, it varies for me. I'll try to read a couple hours before, just skim it. But I'll start to think about stuff, and this is a bad habit. So I'll start to think about stuff and stop listening. And that's when I have to go back to the notes and scroll in and like read what the hell's going on. Ayla's really good about sticking to her notes, so I feel a bit more confident that I'm on page. But with Nick, I'm reading, and then you're like, so Mike, what do you think about this? I'm like, oh, shit.
Whoops.
Well, and it's funny that you talk about like the derailments, because when I go back and I listen, the derailments are like the best part, and so I think that's been kind of cool, because it's like I like to come prepared for an episode, but then I'm okay not touching any of it and repackaging it as something else down the road, because sometimes you have to talk for 50 minutes about a strawberry and what's going on with it. I mean, that was relevant to that episode, but should we be doing an episode on like something else and that come up again? I do feel like there's like a momentum that starts up, and then you're like, oh, we're thinking along the same lines. And it's cool, because I don't know about you, I don't have these types of conversations with too many people outside of the three of us.
So I not like this type, but a lot of derailments and tangential I think that conversations just tend to lead towards tangential thinking. Like I'll have conversations with other friends where we're talking about their life events and what's going on, and then we like segue to a half-hour conversation about like doing impressions of random people and like just bullshitting, and then we have to bring it back to the original conversation. So I don't know if that's how your friend groups work, but my friend groups outside of this friend group tend to work like that, and I think it's a natural part of conversation in general.
Mm-hmm.
No, am I crazy?
No,
I think that's right on. I mean, I think, conversations. So I'm thinking of, I watched that movie Memoirs of a Geisha, and there's a section in there, because I started to read the book, but I didn't finish it. But she talks about like the art of conversation, and, there are, what am I trying to say? So we think of muses as inspiring to artists and writers, but I do think that there can be conversations that become inspired, and whether or not it's because of the people involved, or it's something from the ethers that kind of like just catches the vibe at the same time. You know what I mean? Like, to me, I feel like there's some conversations, not just here, but with other people, that feel like really inspired conversations. You remember them. I don't know what the difference is between, persons A through C having that inspired conversation at one point in time and not at another point in time. But I do wonder about the differences sometimes.
I think it comes down to just the flow, right? How well can you sort of flow topics together? And usually the most fulfilling conversations in my experience have been the ones that end at the same place they started.
Yeah.
Which is something that I kind of like about the podcast. And, maybe we should move on to other episodes before we just end up talking too much about it. But I do like my favorite parts of episodes are when we can bring something up and be like, oh yeah, we have a whole episode on that. If you want to learn more about that thing, go check out this episode. We talk all about it. And what I've found, at least so far in what the podcast is doing, is that there's a lot of things that are all just interconnected. Most of the things that we talk about are in relation to other episodes that we've done. And I find that really interesting. So I think that kind of interconnectivity with conversation and ideas sort of generates stimulation and makes things exciting. And then when you can tie it all in a bow and have this sort of symmetry in the conversation, it's fulfilling for us.
That's interesting because it brings about this idea. So podcasting becomes like the purposeful nature of derailing, like kind of expanding and then contracting back to that singular thread.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas natural conversation can spring out and then in really, I guess, organic ways keep spreading out, right? But you can always bring it back to that central point where you've spread out before.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
it should be like a torus, right? So it comes out and it spreads and then it goes back in on itself.
Or
That's
DNA.
the way you kind of see it. Or DNA, yeah.
Over the series of, like, I'm imagining time going from, I guess I should go like this. Wait, this way. From here to here. Everything reversed.
Right.
Mirrored. But yeah, no, like as it flows forward, it goes out and then contracts and expands and then contracts, right?
Mm-hmm.
And kind of pulling it back to our list of shows from Inch Time Foot Gem. Our third topic, now that we're like half an hour in or something, was
this is gonna be a long one.
Was the Black Knight satellite, which I enjoyed a lot too.
Yeah, I like that one. That one was one of mine. That's been an internet legend for quite some time, and it was interesting to kind of look into that. A lot of comments that I got from that are people who just think it's space garbage, and there's nothing to sort of be interested in regarding that. But then again, this is our show is about suspension of disbelief, and I think that there's still something very odd about what we call the Black Knight satellite. And it's very strange.
Yeah, I would say that's what the Black Knight satellite wants you to think.
Maybe
it's like a pylon for an AI. It doesn't want you to know that it's just sending waves of information into our brains. It's like, yeah, it's just space junk. Don't worry about it at all.
Mm-hmm. The good old space junk argument. Yeah.
Just another weather balloon in space.
Yep.
Somehow. Our next episode was on Seneca's On the Tranquility of the Mind. So this kind of helps with those sorts of like, it's just space junk kind of stuff, right? Because at the end of the day, unless you and I can touch the Black Knight satellite or anybody that we know personally or that can give us paper research, even it's so shaky, but you just can't really worry about that stuff. Like the notion of entertaining an idea before believing in it, before putting emotional stressors into whatever the hell you're talking about.
Yeah. I would like, that's one I'm actually going to have to go back to because I remember only very small bits of it. But again, I think the philosophy stuff has always been my favorite conversations out of all of them. So that's definitely one I'm going to put on my playlist to re-listen to.
So I remember going to the beach a lot for that episode. Don't remember the episode at all, though.
Oh, well, maybe that's what inspired it, though, right?
Yeah. Well, I was reading Seneca at the time. Just the what is it? It's a very small book. It's about his life lessons. Life is short. For people who don't know how to live it, or something like that was a thesis, which makes
Mhm.
sense. Life is actually really long and for the most part miserable. But if it feels short to you, then you're not experiencing it in the right way because you have like an hour is so much time. It's ridiculous that I found out, especially if you become efficient in the way you use your time for the things that you care about.
Mhm.
The episode after that we did was What is Art, where we had like that Lord of the Rings painting that we talked about. I remember
Yep.
that a bit.
Yeah, I
Uh,
remember getting a little bit indignant in this episode, I think, because I just kept railing on the concepts of modern art, I think.
you sound so classy about
Yeah.
it. Indignant.
Yeah,
Yeah, it was a bit of a spicy episode.
I think
Art
so.
is the eye of the beholder. Critics shouldn't, unless critics can make art themselves, I don't want to hear shit. And
Right.
if they are critical of art and can make art, then show me your art and then we'll talk. Because
Mhm.
all three of us here have created something from scratch in one art form or another.
Mhm.
So we, in some way, even if we're very ignorant in our criticisms of said art, have at least created something in itself. And I would
Yeah.
even, depending on the criticism, I can take that as a form of art, but you got to work hard to do that because you're still building off of something else.
Right. Yeah, and I think that the act of creating itself breeds humility because it shows you how incapable you can be.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
at least in my experience, for sure. Like, making stuff is fun. It's invigorating, but when you start a process of creating something, you become very aware of your limitations, and I think that breeds a certain level of humility. Um, for a while
Yeah.
until you get really good, and then you start buying your own supply.
Well, what I love about skating is that it plays a little bit in the same line. Like you get real confident in your ability to skateboard, but the second you try something outside of your comfort zone, you'll break a bone. You'll feel some physical pain,
Hmm.
and that will check your humility so fast.
Yeah.
Until you get really good at skating, and then you have to go bigger and bigger, which is the same thing with art.
Hmm.
Uh, like I'm a trained computer scientist, took a lot of graduate level computer science class, which is fancy math classes, which if you get into academia is like the ivory tower of the ivory tower. That's like the highest place to be is in mathematics. But the hardest class I ever took was drawing 101 because it
Mm-hmm.
took me so out of my comfort zone that I was shit-tastic at it. I was so bad at it. It
Yeah.
wasn't even funny. And
There's something exhilarating at being shit at something, though. There
yeah,
really
because
is. Yeah.
what's great is that you learn is that there's still things to learn in life.
Right.
And
Hmm.
that's such a good feeling to know that
Hmm.
you're not the master of everything. Because if I was the master of everything, we would all be fucked. Everything would be done.
Yeah, there would be no reason to keep going, right?
Well, there's also a new study that says if you learn something, like the act of learning new things keeps the brain, like it staves off Alzheimer's and other kinds of degenerative diseases of the brain. That
Hmm.
just came out like last
Ah,
month, which was pretty cool. Hmm. Do your
Puzzles.
crossword puzzles, yeah,
Mhm.
and take classes and keep learning. I think that's like important for sure.
I'm so jaded about all that stuff. So the reason why I'm jaded is I got tasked in university to make a program that solved all Sudoku puzzles. So like any Sudoku puzzle you find in a newspaper, and then an n by n Sudoku puzzle as big as you can make them,
Hmm.
and you can write code to do that. And so now every time I come across like a crossword puzzle, Sudoku puzzle, anything like in the newspaper, I'm like, oh, I could probably code something that does that, even if it takes me like a decade or something. It could get done.
Yeah.
And then I have to go into like some other realm, like art or ceramics, or something that like That's, I guess, more left side brain than right side brain, or
Hmm.
right side brain than left side brain, whichever the opposite is.
The creative side. Yeah. Right side.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, whatever it is. But yeah, no, keep doing your crossword puzzles. Keep running around your hamster wheels. No, I'm just kidding. That's awful to say. The episode after that we did, after What Is Art, was the butterfly effect.
Hmm. Yeah, remember very little. That is one that I don't go back to because I made such a shitty thumbnail that I don't click it. I need to change that thumbnail.
Of all
That's
things.
that's the worst thumbnail I've made. It's awful. I think what right now. I mean, it's got decent views for us, but yeah, it's not a good looking thumbnail. So I'm gonna go revisit that one and maybe remake the thumbnail. But the
You're
butterfly.
such a perfectionist, and that's
Yeah. I mean, I'm perfectionist in my own respect. I don't think that what I do is perfect. It's just particular about how I do it.
yeah,
Um,
of course.
but yeah, no, I kind of want to revisit that episode anyways, just because I want to remember the conversations we had within the constructs of a butterfly effect, because that's a that's one of those that I've lost too. Which is funny because what we're doing right now is we're downloading our ideas and consciousnesses into this sort of cloud, quote unquote. So we don't have to keep them in our brains anymore.
Yeah, that's we've been doing that for a long time though. This was my problem with like students selling their textbooks
Hmm.
in university, because what are you really doing with your classes? You're downloading all that knowledge to be able to hold it until the test comes, and then once the test comes, what, you just dump it?
Let it go. Yeah.
That's isn't the whole point of the thousands of dollars of student debt you're getting yourself into, is to hold that knowledge for
Mhm.
forever, hopefully. And then if you let go of the books, it's not like you can refresh yourself on it. And
Hmm.
this comes, like, going back to computer science. There's a notion of having memory. How do I want to explain? Having memory that is specific to refresh other memory,
Hmm.
so that you don't have to exactly remember all of the particulars, but as long as you remember this one thing, then you can go and explore and expand on it. And that becomes kind of important in life in general, which like, you don't have to remember every little thing you learned about your major, but then the big things you should learn so that you can explore the nuances whenever you need to.
For certain. Yeah. I will definitely be listening to the butterfly effect at some point.
Yeah, this is sort of
We'll
like
see.
the now then the roundabout. These are all your little pointers that you can all
Yeah.
point back to throughout the account.
Right, exactly. I need to go back to that one and think about it.
After that, we did the middle path,
Hmm.
which was fun. I actually like that
Hmm.
episode a lot.
Yeah, me too.
The middle path was like a Buddhist idea, right? That you don't get too extreme in one way or another, if I'm not
Mhm.
mistaken. And that ends up going back to Aristotle's. Like, I didn't have this knowledge at the time. I wasn't reading Aristotle at the time. I had this book that meant a lot to me, and I literally just couldn't get through it due to emotional reasons. And now I'm reading it, and it plays along the same lines of, like, you have the virtue that you're aiming for, the mean, the middle path, and then you have something that goes too far over it. Then you have something that's lacking or not enough. These example is like courage. So you don't want to be so bold that you run into every situation with bravery,
Mhm.
because if you do, you'll end up in a dragon's mouth and you end up dead. But at the same time, you don't want to be afraid of everything that you come across, because then you become a coward. You want to reach that middle point um, where you can be seen as courageous. I would argue that where you can view yourself as courageous, because it's much better than relying on somebody else's ideas of what courageous is.
Yeah.
But that was sort of the gist of the middle path, right?
Yeah, and it gets down to that sort of concept of like stillness and taking the middle path being the I like to think of it as like like a stopped pendulum. Pendulum swings from one direction to the other, but the middle path is like the pendulum just stops. And in that stopping, it can make its decision. So instead of being the reaction to the event, you can be a witness to the event and then make your reactions appropriate. That
Don't we
gives
have
you-
some criticisms on Jedis as well?
Yeah, of course. because they're way too cerebral. It was their astringency and orthodoxy that kind of like, fed Anakin to the Sith, right?
Yeah.
Anakin's
Sure.
coming back too.
Oh.
They're doing this new. I mean, gosh, they're over saturating the Star Wars market right now. But they're doing a spinoff with why can't I remember his name? He's in Big Fish.
Ewan
You-
McGregor, Obi-Wan.
That's it. Yeah. So they're doing like a focus point on his story, and apparently they're gonna have like OG Anakin come back.
Which just totally destroys the OT, but whatever.
Don't worry about any
Yeah.
of that stuff.
Yeah.
There should have taken X amount of years for Obi-Wan and Darth Vader to meet again, but they meet somewhere in the middle. Maybe
Yeah,
they're both
yeah.
old and forget.
The first
about
thing
shit.
that Darth Vader says to Obi-Wan is that, well, last time I was with you, I was the Padawan or the trainee. Now
I
I'm
was
the master.
student. Yeah, I
Yeah.
was the student. Now I am the master. Yeah, we don't worry about it. Don't watch the old movies.
No,
That doesn't matter at all.
just erase them.
That's
Isn't
a
it
whole
fun?
other conversation.
I just think it's funny how like the minute a person declares themselves a master at something, I instantly jar like, well, then I don't know, because right, like the more you know you don't know. So yeah, and I mean Anakin would say that if he's like a Sith, but I think it's just kind of funny, like talking about the middle path, and then you have these dichotomies, student, master.
Yeah, it's the pride of the dark side, right?
Yeah.
That's what that emotion feeds into, which makes a lot of sense for a Sith. But in reality, like going just back to reality, you can always learn something about your craft. And if you're so good at it that you know everything, then you can discover something about your craft that you didn't know before through the skills that you have. You should be the one developing the groundbreaking work if you're such a master at the thing you claim to be a master in.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd co-sign that.
Yeah. But moving forward, we had, I think, an Ayla favorite. We had a Mercury Retrograde, an astrology episode.
Oh, yeah, that one. We had to. I mean, eventually it had to come up. We had to talk about it. And I noticed more and more people bringing up Mercury Retrograde. And I was like, all right, let's just deep dive this. And it was interesting because I remember not much from the episode, except that, like, it's interesting how involved the system of astrology is, and like people get really into it, and I don't really know enough to because everybody, like if you question it, the person's like, well, you have to know your houses, you have to know blah blah blah. And so I mean, yeah, it could be real, but
this is a very California thing to talk about.
Yeah, and that too. Yeah,
or
absolutely.
Los Angeles thing to talk about. And then as a disclaimer, most people from California aren't from California. So some natives of California may have taken on ideas that are outside from California and are now considered quote unquote native. But away from that, Ayla, do you still think about Mercury retrograde? Because I do think that there are men that get emotional at certain points during the time of the year, or just not uncompromisable, but just unwilling to meet in the middle. Unwilling to say that they're wrong, which may point to Mercury retrograde.
Oh, well, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I've definitely had a day where technology was a bit weird, and then another day where communication was really weird, and then another, like, so 3 consecutive days of like, what is this onslaught of difficulty? And I always will check if Mercury's in retrograde, and I would say 7 out of 10 times it is. Granted, Mercury retrograde is like, I think this year we only had it 3 times, but like next year we'll be in retrograde 5 times. And the period lasts like a month and a half. So I think now, having had the accident that I did on a non-Mercury retrograde day, it doesn't fucking matter. Like, screw the planets. I don't care. It's just, because I don't really think it changes anything. I guess the only thing you could say is like avoid signing contracts just to be on the safe side. But if it's a good one, do it anyway.
What I was hoping for is that we would agree that men get on their periods during Mercury retrograde. And that's what happens.
Oh, sure. Okay, yeah. No. Stamped and approved.
Stamped and approved. Nick, what do you think about Mercury retrograde?
Same thing I did before. Bullshit.
Yeah, just complete bullshit. Just doesn't.
Nah. I mean, look, there's confessication between communications all the time. I don't necessarily need to attach it to some cosmic entity that's, millions of miles away from us.
Yeah, because that robs you of like agency.
Yeah.
And I don't like that. I don't like thinking that things are fatalistic. But then you talk to your astrology people because you're like, well, I had a good month and Mercury was in retrograde. What gives? And then they're like, well, because the placement, you don't have Leo, blah, 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 and so they always have a reason.
Turned your doorknob counterclockwise 3 times and stepped on a duck. That's why.
Right. Which makes me think
Yo,
of my other favorite.
Offset Mercury and retrograde.
Well, that reminds me, this gets into last year, but we did that episode on superstitions. That's probably one of my favorites of 2020 because superstition is really fucking interesting when you start unwrapping what's going on there. And
you got to keep it at 2021. We were keeping it within scope.
All right, I'm going to notate the time. We're going to edit that out.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
That's a whole lifetime ago. Nobody knows about 2020.
What if we redid every episode from 2020 and 2022?
I mean, reboots are really popular. So
they are. Only if we can recast ourselves and have other people do it for us.
Ooh.
Oh, who would you want to be you?
I don't know. I mean, it doesn't matter. I would just cast
some
random person. There you go.
Rami Malek's me. Fix it.
All right.
Fix close enough.
I'll cast myself as Wanda Sykes.
Well, there you go.
All right.
I do miss Wanda Sykes. I miss her stand-up. I haven't seen like any of her specials in so long, but they were fucking hilarious.
We can bring her back.
Yeah, no.
And host Exofathom.
And then Sarah Silverman, are you sure?
I don't know. I just like how sassy she is. She's funny. I like her voice.
Huh.
It's a podcast. I feel like
better.
My words coming out of her mouth would be kind of hilarious just for my amusement.
She does have a unique voice, and you do have a unique voice. That's where
I'm not a fan of my voice. Yes, we were talking off air about this episode. I forget which one it was. And it was the inch time foot gem one, which I didn't bring it up, and I'm probably going to regret bringing it up now. But for whatever reason, I remember doing that episode and the number of times I heard myself say inch time foot gem and just being like, why is my voice so high? Like, and then like wanting to have a deeper voice. Like, I don't know. I should start smoking if that's what I need, like just to kind of dampen things a bit. Foot
gem sounds like one of those MK Ultra like release codes,
trigger,
Yeah, trigger codes.
Oh my God. What if
pick up the phone and it's like inch time foot gem.
Look, I'll be real with you. If a waitress who's been smoking for like 30 years came up to me and said inch time foot gem, I might be released. I might become like the Manchurian candidate.
Right.
So I don't know how I feel about Mercury retrograde, only because I worry we don't understand gravity that well. So I worry that it might play a bit more of an effect in the equilibrium of our brain and like the neurons firing and all that shit than we like to admit or even like to think about.
Shit, I didn't even think about gravity, but
Maybe.
maybe.
Like look at a concussion though. Hold on, I'm sorry. Look at it like a concussion, and that's like the brain slamming again. So imagine if it just changed the brain enough, position enough where it was pressed against the skull and couldn't expand it anymore. It was just
Mm-hmm.
held which neurons there. But it's just minute enough to where you wouldn't notice it. Which is just complete bullshit, but it's something that I still worry about.
No, I hear you. I hear you. I mean, when you think about gravity's role with time and how weird stuff gets the further you go out, it starts to become a little bit plausible that celestial bodies far away might have an impact on us, especially since we're still recording gravitational waves from the Big Bang, right? Like that was a thing. So who knows? My question would be, if that is confirmed at some point, how the hell did we know that hundreds of years ago when astrology started doing its thing? I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's hard. It's difficult. All right, moving on. We're just going to skip all of that and save it for a later episode.
Hell yeah.
Some more to talk about.
Yeah. Next we had was the utility monster, which is an idea that I enjoy a lot, only because I'm a workaholic, or I have an addictive personality, and work is one of the things I love. I love being addicted to. But that was a good episode, Nick. Was that your episode again?
Yeah. So I really enjoyed this one a lot, and I think it's because it's fitting for where we find ourselves. And I won't get into those types of details because this is a mind vacation for people out there. But I do think that this particular episode is applicable to the traps that we fall in society sometimes. And so if you don't listen to that particular episode, go check out the concept and maybe just give it a thought yourself, because to me, that's one of the most important concepts that we could consider right now.
Yeah. And it's the probably the Sigma mindset on crack on the extreme. So if you're a Sigma type human, you're good. Just gotta reel it in just a little bit. You'll be okay.
Yeah, it's a good one to go back to.
No, it is a good one to listen to. Ayla, any comments on the utility monster? Do you have a utility monster?
I have read too many essays on like ethics and morality to really have an opinion on any of that kind of stuff. But it is a very interesting episode. I remember it being really thought-provoking and uncomfortable, and yeah,
Right.
I mean, I think it's worth listening to for sure.
So you have a train and it's going down a track.
Well, what comes to mind is that character that I love. There's this show, The Good Place, and okay, well, spoiler alert, it's been out for a while, so if you haven't seen it, just mute for like a minute. Starting now. So Chidi, he's an ethics professor, and he thinks he's in heaven, living the greatest life, and still having issues finishing this book that he wanted to write, and having ideas about morality and ethics, which he can't, and soon finds out he's in hell because he was never able to make a decision in his life, and that caused harm to other people. And so like it's such a great character. I really can't recommend that show enough, specifically for Chidi. Yeah,
makes sense. Indecision. So like when I like to think about it, like when you're driving and you're trying to make a left-hand turn, it's not the people that worry me with that make like the left-hand turn too late and get in the car accident, but it's when they don't commit to the left-hand turn, when they go and stop and go and stop and go and stop, that ends up being the worst thing. Like you got to just commit to the decision. Commit to a decision. Either you go or you don't go. But once you're going, don't stop.
Although I will say, I got into a head-on collision with another cyclist because I was coming downhill really fast. And
wait, these are bicycles?
Yeah, bicycles. I was just on a bicycle, and she's coming at me, and I'm like staying on my side, the right side. I go right, she go right. We don't collide. But for some reason, she started coming towards my side. So I went to the other side. And then she went to my side. So then I went back to my side. She did it a third time. And I was like, well, this time I'm going to commit and she's just going to have to move. That apparently was the exact same thing that she decided, and she didn't move. And so, yeah, it was.
Do you want to know something funny?
What's funny?
There's a thing that humans do where when you meet eye contact with somebody or just general body language, you know, when like you're walking up to somebody and you end up like doing a weird dance where to like meet in the middle and you're trying to like cross them, you end up like standing in the same place.
Oh yeah,
That's
you have
actually
to look.
Yeah, that's human nature. So probably what she did was meeting with you as you guys are going down and did this weird sort of opposite dance. But the whole time the subconscious wanted you to meet in the middle.
Well, yeah, and I learned that at Disneyland because the big crowds there. Last time I was there years ago, but if you just look like you fade your eyes out, you don't make any eye contact, and you just look like 20 people ahead, people get out of your way. You don't have to do any dances. I don't know. It's like, yeah, like if they see you, there's this weird uncertainty thing. But if they think that you don't see them, then they get out of the way. Not that I'm mowing people down. I'm just saying, like, if you don't make eye contact, it's much easier.
Hey, don't worry. I've kicked somebody in the head before walking around Disneyland.
Disneyland.
I just look in one direction and just focus on that point and just go in that direction. And then everybody moves out of my way, and it's brilliant. That's what you do. That's the plan.
Right.
All right. So after letting out the utility monster in me, the next thing we approached was Mayan religion. Do you remember anything about that Mayan religion? Because I do.
Regale us.
Yeah. The regalia was definitely very important within that show. But it was a lot of matriarchal worship. It ends up being. So like some of the most excruciating things I've experienced in my life was operations on the male member, but they would do it just for fun. Because motherhood was so important within their religion that men were expected, or royal men were expected, to try to reproduce a period. And then that ends up playing a big role in their god and goddesses and their creation myth.
Oh, right. The bloodletting.
Yes. Penile bloodletting.
Yeah. Good times.
Oh, forgetting that.
Imagine that.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh my God. But that just shows you like how important in some Latin American traditions that the mother was, and because everything came from Mother Earth. One of my favorite ideas in criticizing Western culture or European Western culture is the notion that our mother left us the second we founded Rome. So it's like once we started to build all this technology and ignored Mother Nature, we've kind of started to build the Tower of Babylon. But in like Mesoamerican Western culture, that never becomes a thing, which ends up holding them back outside of the guns, gods, or the guns still argument, or the guns and animals argument. The guns are a part of still. But outside of that argument, like the important thing is like this whole matriarchal culture. So that's what I found interesting between you is like you still have this self-harming matriarchal culture that men still go through no matter what, if they want to be royal. And it's almost like in a modern sense, I would imagine out of an extreme form of empathy to understand what it's like to have a period or understand what it's like to birth, which they can't, but it's the thought that counts.
Probably also a marker of toughness as well, right?
Of course.
Cut your dick with obsidian, you're probably pretty tough.
Yeah, bleed out of your vagina for X amount of days. You're probably very tough.
Yeah.
I will say there's a certain level of injustice that washes over you as a woman when you get your first period and you realize like what the hell that's going to be like for the rest of your life, because it's usually an awful experience
Trust me.
initially and it settles sometimes if you're lucky. Yes,
Trust
Mike.
me. There's a certain amount of injustice that washes over you if you bleed out your dick for the first time. You're like, oh, I
Well,
gotta
that's
go
what I
through
was
this for the
gonna
rest of my
say.
life.
Is that if like 14-year-old me was like sitting with that injustice and then looking over at like my homeboy friend over here and being like, at least I don't have to like that. Yeah. I mean, it would
But to your
also
point,
level
though,
things
like
out a little bit.
in royal tradition, I only have to do that once. You have to. It's natural, right? So you don't have to feel any unnatural source of pain, but you have to do that your whole life. Men, like they would have to do that once, or maybe in ritual, which would happen every couple of years, or whatever their ritual thing
I
was.
said
if
it
it
would
didn't.
kind of level out
Yeah.
the injustice.
Yeah.
Kind of.
Unless you're really bad at life and you somehow have to pee blood a lot, then that could get really rough. Like if you're somebody with kidney stones all the time as a guy, that is like the worst experience.
It's like
pretty
Joey.
Yeah, it's like muddy waters over there. You're just screaming.
Oof.
All right, moving forward. Although I can make bleeding penis jokes all day, we're going to
Oh,
move
boy.
forward. The lizard brain, which is
Yeah.
what all of my jokes were acting upon in the previous segment.
Hey. Yeah, lizard brain. This one I wasn't that fond of.
Why not?
I think what I was trying to do was, well, sometimes I'm okay with the way like make a conversation feel cohesive. I don't recall that particular conversation feeling cohesive, but I do like the concepts that we were talking about, like how I do remember specifically how we were talking about sort of the way social media and stuff wires and makes the lizard brain fire more, giving those dopamine hits to the brain and all of that type of stuff. So I think that was really interesting. I would have maybe liked to gone a bit deeper into that topic, but I think we also talked a little bit about lizard people, maybe. I don't quite remember.
Maybe.
We might have touched a little bit on lizard people too.
Are you a lizard person?
No, I hope not. I try not to be. I try not to be ruled by my amygdala.
This seems like an indiverse cast of individuals, if I must say.
Yeah, that one I don't have much to say on, just because I think that it's pretty straightforward. I don't remember the sort of mythological connections that I was making with that, but I do like the idea that social media particularly preys on that baser brain that we have.
I think mythologically speaking, well, there's not much on it versus like the pituitary gland, right?
Right.
So it's two different things. But Happy Gilmore talks a lot about the lizard brain.
Yeah, it does.
So that has to count for something.
Right. Yeah. And the water boy, right?
Yeah.
Something wrong with his medulla oblongata.
What do you think about the lizard brain, Hila? Is that how did you want to kill me after the Mario Party thing? Were you like full lizard brain after all that?
Rage.
Right. No, it is interesting. I think that the brain, we're understanding so much about it, and I think that it's helping us rethink stuff. And I mean, it was an interesting episode.
You don't remember? It's okay.
No,
hey, don't expose her. We could lie.
No,
there,
it's okay.
Covered for her and fed ideas.
It's a bit hard for me to say that my brain is very much use it or lose it. So I am the person that sold her textbooks and forgot everything immediately after the quiz. But that's okay because I'm constantly learning new things. It's just a constant filter of I knew this at one point, and now I don't. So
You see, this is why you don't go to Stanford. And this is why you're not poor. Don't be born into poor families. If you
Who
can
went to
control not being poor
there it is. There it is.
into poor families. You know.
I have this theory that like you don't like what the information you learn from like kindergarten to mid college. I feel like that stuff sticks with you, and then everything after just kind of like comes and goes in a use it or lose it manner. And I only say that because like I have friends that went to private school, K through 12, and like, my God, the volume of information in their minds when we met, I was just like, that's obscene. Like my public school education
Kids are
did not.
sponges.
Yeah, but like that
Mhm.
stuff sticks with you, and it's just like so much better than the stuff that you learn when you're a little older.
Well, elasticity does reduce over the time, right? Like your brain becomes less
Mhm.
elastic. So the newer stuff you learn as you get older may not stick as well unless you reinforce those neural pathways,
Move it or lose it.
which makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, then we have the red planet, where we thought about Mars, and if we should go there, and if we go there, if we're going to find settlements, if we actually came from Mars and like just totally trashed it, like it was a party planet, like a
Mhm.
frat party planet, and they came to
God.
Earth.
Yeah. Yeah. I do remember that one. That was interesting. There was this, I believe I added the remote viewing session they did on Mars a million years ago. If I didn't, then I totally dropped the ball. I have to go back and
You did.
check, but okay, good.
You added it. You
Okay,
added it.
good. But yeah. Mars is an interesting planet. I always loved learning about planets and stuff when I was a kid. So it was fun to kind of dig into facts about Mars.
Yeah.
And
Mars
talk about
was
Olympus Mons, I think, which is the tallest mountain.
Yeah, in our solar system. Mars
Mhm.
was my favorite planet until I learned about Pluto. I was thinking Jupiter because we're coming up on remote viewing on Jupiter, but until I
Mhm.
learned about Pluto. But Mars was legit.
It's legit.
Let's
It's
move
legit.
there.
And that's
Hurry
not.
They've got underwater canyons, or wait,
Right.
water
Yeah.
under canyons. I don't know. They discovered water, which is exciting.
Onion water
So-
canyons.
Under.
Onion
Sorry.
water is just as good too.
Mhm.
You know, you know, Elon. If you got enough money, just buy some nukes. Like I know you just liquidated all those assets. Just buy some nukes and just nuke Mars.
Mhm.
Hurry up. Let's get that done. Let's terraform it. We'll move on from Earth.
Yeah,
Maybe. Probably not, but maybe.
we'll see.
One day. Then after that, after the red planet, we went on to the fifth dimension.
Mhm.
Which is,
Yeah, that was a good one.
Yeah, one of my favorite ones where we built a toy dimension. So when dimension is a fancy word for just um, another plane or just another way, another number to keep measurement within a different system. So you have, of course, you have no dimension, which is just nothing. Then you have one dimension, which is like a number line. You have two dimensions, which is like your X and Y plane that we taught you in high school. Three dimensions, and you have one shooting out, which ends up you're able to define something like a glass of whiskey with a certain volume of whiskey in it. Over four dimensions, then you can add something to it. In this case, I want to call it time, and it's the time that my whiskey went from this much down to this much. And then in a fifth dimension, you can take into account all the different points of time where my whiskey was different amounts. So in one fifth dimensional space, I drank it at a certain amount. In a different fifth dimensional space, I drank it at a different rate or a different amount. And we talked about what that fifth dimension could be as far as all those points in time in different places. So I think we even talked about different life choices and professions and different things like that.
Hmm.
And it's something that is really interesting because you can think of yourself like if you worry about your life decisions, you can take solace in the idea that you made different decisions somewhere within that fifth dimension.
Hmm. Yeah. Or even still, that each decision that you make might shift you into that different dimension.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that we have different bins of fate, right?
Hmm.
Different spaces of fate, and you're always on heading towards a certain path towards a certain fate.
Hmm. Yeah, I like this episode a lot because it kind of informs how we talk about the rest of our sort of esoteric episodes when it comes to fifth dimensional spaces and ideas, because we definitely talk about that a lot in subsequent episodes. But I thought that that was a good beginner to get us into that concept, because it's something that we refer back to a lot within the rest of the episodes that we've done.
Yeah, and it's good to demystify that sort of stuff.
Hmm.
In mathematical models, you do this all the time. Machine learning models, for example, you end up having to deal with hundreds or thousands of dimensions. And what you have to do, at least if you're good at your job, is to reduce the amount of dimensions you have to deal with because it ends up costing time to compute those dimensions and what exact point that you're in. Um, if you've used something like Google, you've interacted with a more than three-dimensional space. That's for sure.
Hmm.
Um, it all plays into like for me the big thing was introducing the general idea of dimensionality or just dimensions in general because if I try to explain to you that I've worked in n dimensions, you look at me like I'm crazy, but that's what computer scientists end up doing, and it's good to demystify that, to just say it's another system of numbers that you're interacting with, and
Hmm.
then to apply that to the esoteric ends up grounding that sort of esoteric work within mathematics. Or although I'm being misleading because mathematics is not grounded, but we'll just say it is. We'll
Yeah.
just say it is.
We'll say it is. We do say it is sometimes, so that works.
Dude, that's one of like in philosophy, that's one of the biggest points of contention is whether or not math is grounded. And it probably isn't, but it's really useful. Like
Hmm.
grounded in the sense that if I tell you 2 plus 2 is 4, then I've told you something meaningful about the universe. But the counter argument is that you have to say to what? To apples, to glasses, to computers, to what? 2 plus 2
Hmm.
plus 4 doesn't tell me anything. And
Right.
so by doing that, you unground the work of mathematics. Then you get
Yep.
into a long argument about language.
As we usually do.
Yeah. Ayla, did you like the fifth dimension?
Oh yeah, you know, dimensions are one of those things that I find fascinating, of course, because why wouldn't you? When I was in the second grade, we were given this book called Flatland. Did you guys? I think I mentioned this in that episode. Do you know what this is?
Yeah.
It's like a small book, and it's for those of you listening who might not know what it is. It's just a little book with these characters that start out in the first dimension and then move into the second dimension. It kind of goes on like that. I don't remember how it ends or what the plot was, but like when you think about I don't know, the different definitions of other dimensions, it's really hard to fathom. But if you inspect the ones that we're familiar with, you can start to kind of like wrap your head around it and think like it's unfathomable to us because we haven't seen it yet. But I do find it interesting that shows like Loki, some of the more popular ones now are getting into the idea of like different dimensions, different realities, seeming to expand our base imagination so that we can imagine a bit more further down the road. And I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah. No, no. Flatlanders deal with the two-dimensional space, right? Like those 2D beings that can walk across
Like a
around the
line.
page.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and they couldn't
like a
go
line.
around each other because of the way it was structured. So it was like each dimension had its limitations
Mhm.
and rules. And then when you transcend into the next one, there's some things you can do, but then more rules. And it's just, yeah.
Yeah, and so if you're in our dimension, if you're in this beautiful 4D dimension, some higher being came down, it might look like a monolith in the middle of the desert or something. Just be a little.
Ooh, and it might tell you,
There is no spoon.
did we get a mixer? Uh-oh. No, I'm just kidding.
You're just playing things on your phone. But that was
Yeah.
well planned. That was well
I-
planned. Good job.
Just try it.
10
I
out
have
of
one
10.
more. One more. This is my favorite. This is from Inception.
No idea is simple when you need to plant it in somebody else's mind.
It's a good sample.
we just got copyright written strictly.
Yeah. They took
Thanks.
all of our money away. No.
Nah, because
All 0 cents.
Yeah.
all 0 cents. No, yeah, probably. Whatever.
No, it's not music, so it's fine.
No, you're good.
All right.
So
what's next?
remote viewing on Jupiter.
On Jupiter. Yeah, I remember that one.
Jupiter.
Yeah. That was fun. It was another one of those odd documents that was in the CIA library. Gets passed around on forums once in a while. Really interesting that there were some confirmations about what the remote viewers perceived while they were on Jupiter, and things that they seem to have confirmed about properties of Jupiter that we didn't know exactly yet. If I recall, they were sending those guys out to remote view Jupiter right before one of the telescopes arrived. And so they were able to verify some of the information that was given by the remote viewers subsequently, because the telescope was coming like a few months later. And so I think that's when we learned that it rains diamonds on Jupiter. But
Yeah, I was about to
within the
ask.
remote viewing, they had mentioned that they saw crystals and diamonds raining from the sky, which was something that we didn't know before.
Yeah, and then too, there was some things that they got wrong, right? And then we talked about if like the quantum effect of observing could have effect on remote viewing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there were a couple things that they were incorrect about. I don't recall what they were, but there were certain things that they were right on about. I believe there were talks. I think what they were wrong about was mountain ranges, because Jupiter doesn't have actual physical mountain ranges. And I believe they mentioned some sort of mountain, but they did talk about oceans of gas and stuff like that. And specifically the raining of diamonds, which was one of the big talking points of the remote viewing, which wasn't confirmed until after the telescope passed some 6 months or so later. So interesting little dive into the strange, for sure. Makes you kind of perk up a little bit when you're like, well, I mean, yes, two people could imagine that a planet has diamonds raining from it, but why would they? You know?
Well, remote viewing's a thing. It's a real thing.
Yeah.
And Jupiter's a real thing.
Yeah, exactly. Why couldn't they have been there?
Yeah, just in a different timeline, though.
Mm-hmm.
As far as fifth dimensions go.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Are we done with that one?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, we can. There's certain ones that I'm okay with breezing through because, most of them are mine. So,
I see. I sense some insecurity here, but we'll move on.
Maybe.
Next one we have is the collective unconscious.
Mm-hmm.
I have no recollection of this whatsoever. When did we do this one?
It's
There
in your
you go.
collective unconscious.
Oh, there it is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you weren't there. The other Alo was there.
Perhaps.
I think I just distinctly remember this episode tying back to the fifth dimension too.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
the Jungian of the collective unconscious, but that what it might actually be is a subset of the fifth dimension, if not the whole fifth dimension.
Yeah.
But basically, each one of us has a unconscious, and then all of us has a certain collective unconscious. All of us being humans have unconscious that we pull archetypes from, and we pull these archetypes. We ideally, hopefully, try to model these archetypes in our own life in one fashion or another. But the collective unconscious is everybody's unconscious mind kind of working together as a network.
Mm-hmm.
It ends up being like a big iceberg where it's you have your conscious mind that's very shallow, and at a certain point the ego, even the collective ego, is probably really shallow. But as you dive really much deeper, you find all of these different archetypes that we pull from to build that little tip of the iceberg.
Yep.
Cool.
Yeah, it was fun. That was a good one. I remember that one.
Yeah, no, it was a good one. The next one was I Want to Believe.
Don't remember that one. No.
Go figure.
Nah, that was just before imminent disclosure, right? I was talking about Oumuamua.
Yep.
Yeah. It's funny because I remember doing that episode before all the news of imminent disclosure came out, I think, because like it was just this one Harvard physicist who was like going on about how Oumuamua was a significant discovery. And he's like fixated on all these things. And then a month later, we're going full throttle on alien disclosure. And I remember Nick bringing it up like, this guy's still over here talking about a rock and like all this crazy stuff's happening. And it's fun times.
Yeah. No, it was.
And I think he's
I
still
don't-
talking about that rock. So
He is. You know what? They just ruled out that it was not a big piece of ice.
It may be a rock, but it's definitely not ice.
this is what happens when nerds have to be like the people that give us the disclosure, right? He's got to rule out all hypotheses.
I love it. No, I love it, especially because like his whole thing was that we need to stop thinking aliens are science fiction and start realizing and recognizing that there's no evidence to suggest one way or the other, or there's no good evidence, you know, and I appreciate it for sure. Some people even think that it may have been a fragment of a Pluto-like planet, which is interesting.
Don't Pluto is a planet, and don't say Pluto-like planet. There's only one Pluto.
There's only one Pluto. Well, and then it's funny because here's what the headline says. Interstellar visitor Oumuamua wasn't a nitrogen iceberg, say Harvard astrophysicists. But that's it.
Geez, I hope it's not a methane iceberg. That'd be awkward.
That would
They'll
be
just
awkward.
keep going through all of the gases. Until...
Well, and you
methane
know,
smells a certain way.
oh, like Long Beach now?
Yeah, sure, we'll call it that.
That's so messed up. There's this channel locally that has been smelling like farts for months, and like people's eyes are watering, and there's been no movements to fix this. It's just awful.
I am never moving to
awful.
Long Beach. That's all I'm saying.
I know. Well, Elaine, thankfully it's not like it doesn't linger over here anymore, but it's by that channel on like the north side of Long Beach next to Carson, I think. Anyway, local news, ignore.
But yeah, back to your Oumuamua. It's not a nitrogen piece of ice.
Yeah, I was just going to say there's this new space telescope, the James Webb telescope, and people are really excited about it because it's going to return images that are like going to be the most accurate, clear, best images of the universe that we will have and will have for some time. So stay tuned.
Interesting.
Nice.
Interesting. Okay. Are we done with that one?
I totally misunderstood the assignment because I thought we would each talk about one, and all I had was the Oumuamua stuff, and now I'm like, I'm useless on all the other episodes.
All other
Well, you made some of these episodes, so you'd be able to you'd be able to talk about the ones you made.
You would be
Trust
quite
me, there's-
surprised that I can't.
There's memory triggers here. Don't worry. We'll work it in. It's part of the process. Trust
I
the
need
process.
scaffolding. Scaffolding?
Scaffolding. This makes sense though. Like I said, I've known you for over a decade. This makes sense a lot about a lot of your thought patterns. All of it's becoming very clear now.
Ah, great. There's going to be some weird Ayla AI out there that you're going to build just based off my neurotic pea brain craziness. And then I'm going to encounter it and you're just going to laugh because I probably won't like the robot. And you'll be like, ha 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 ha. Evil client laugh. Anyway.
Well, I tend to be a mirror for other people. So they don't like me. They don't like themselves. So it makes sense that I would make a mirror AI.
It's the
for
children
other
that are wrong.
Yeah.
From something? What am I missing?
Principal Skinner.
Oh, right.
No, it's the children that are wrong.
All right. Aesop's Fables.
Yeah, skip.
Skip. I like
Yeah.
Aesop's Fables. I think we should do more stories of Aesop.
I
What about
agree.
Aesop's foibles.
Fables?
Aesop's
Yes.
Fables is good. I would love to read some more, but I remember the takeaway from that is that Aesop was kind of like an amalgam character for a lot of different folklores and fables. So like there's hundreds of fables that are ascribed to Aesop, but nobody can really confirm that he was the one that wrote them. And more
He may
likely
have
it's
been,
just he may have been just some avatar that we gave all of our moral folklore to.
Yeah, like that freaking et al guy. That et al person has written
Always
so
got all the
many
stuff.
Yeah, so smart. It's insane.
Yeah.
Just like does 1 through 30. No.
It just knows all the things. We have to find that et al person and then bring them into the fold. Be
Mhm.
great. So,
But yeah,
no, I did like Aesop's Fables just in general because those stories are so distilled to a point that it's so succinct that it's just kind of has its own lovely aesthetic to it.
yeah, big time. Some of them aren't as good as others, which you can kind of tell because that would mean that it's more of just like a compendium, a collection that get ascribed to Aesop. But yeah, some of them are perfect encapsulations of really deep life experience and lessons. Like
Yeah, and
if you could take the
whole
life of
idea.
a 100-year-old person and then distill it into a story, like that's what you're getting.
Yeah, I refute the whole idea that it's a collective of people.
I mean, maybe he wrote them all. Sure, it's possible,
I just-
but hundreds.
No, refute it. He
Right.
lived for a really long time.
Yeah.
Ayla, any words on the Aesop Fables?
No, not really. I like the fables. I think they're really good as like
Exopics?
yeah, exobids. But I like the idea of fable because he does fables that are based on the natural world, right? Like woodland creatures and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so like a lot of cultures do something similar. You've got like the coyote stories for the Navajo. There used to be this, I can't remember the title, but there was another series of children's books that were like based on animals. Lots of cultures do that. So I mean, it's nice. It's kind of cool to see the variations. Appreciate them.
Yeah. I almost I was dashing the other night, and I almost ran over a coyote. And as I'm driving, I had the oddest thought that Ayla, that you would be so mad at me if I hit this coyote.
Oh, no, I think the only time I would be mad is if we were driving in a car together and a coyote ran from the north to the south direction right in front of us and you kept driving. Like you
Okay,
would need to
good.
stop.
This was from west to east. Next time I'll just gun it on the accelerator and just
Yeah.
fucking run it
Keep your
over.
compass handy.
Mhm.
I tell you, one of the hardest things about moving from LA proper to outside LA is that when you live in LA, you orient to the major cross streets, like Pico Olympic. Like you memorize which directions those are. But in Long Beach, we're on this peninsula. So like our beach faces a different
The
direction.
north.
Yeah, like that was the most disorienting thing ever.
Dude, when I lived in New Zealand, I was like, yeah, I just gotta
Oh,
follow the
man.
beach. I'll go west. That's where the beach is at.
The beaches in
Beaches
all
Every
always
direction
directions.
is west. Yeah.
It's true. Just about how far you go.
It is
Yeah,
true.
I
Well,
reached
and it's
I hit the top of the hill and I was looking around and I had to get home. There's a situation where I had to be home, which is a hotel room. And I'm looking around, I'm like, I'm so fucked. I don't know.
yeah. It's funny how we orient ourselves.
What I will say is
Oh.
that there was one time that we ran across a coyote in Los Angeles, and Ayla was freaked out, but we didn't have her corn pollen in the car, so we had to go drive back to the house and get her corn pollen.
Like reverse directions and go a
Yeah,
different
change
way.
directions, and then so like we were gone for about 10 minutes, and then we went back to the same spot the coyote was at, and it was waiting for us. It's literally she opened the door and it
Jesus.
just popped right out of the bushes and was like 6 feet away from her, and didn't leave until the corn pollen was placed. So
It's true.
I don't know
Max,
whatever juju that is, but
Max a shapeshifter. Skinwalker. That was a demon. You did that.
Hey, you put the corn pollen down. I did what I needed to do.
Mhm.
Good, But yeah, no, and you'll find if you come with me to the res, Nicholas, that you will find some really cool encounters there. I'll show you some UFOs, some petroglyphs, dinosaur tracks,
Nick, if you
fossilized
want to set up a
seashells.
safe word, and if you just text me that safe word, I can call a bunch of federal agencies.
Thank you. I appreciate
They'll-
that.
We'll
they'll find-
go horseback riding with like a gang of Mustangs, like wild horses. It'll be
My
great.
safe word will be Geronimo.
Inappropriate. No.
I
Nope. This is what you say when you're all in.
I know.
That sounds quite like the American thing to do.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm going to hell. All right. So the last one on our first page of topics.
Oh man, we're gonna have to
Yeah.
break this up.
Yeah, I'm thinking that we can do one on Friday. Like
Yeah.
try to play with the idea of an exo bit, but just a Friday podcast. Since we don't have to really think about the stuff, we don't have to do any research because we've done them all before.
Mhm.
And then trail into the new year with Monday, and that creates like a nice, like the nice notion of a year's end and a year's beginning with the year's
Mhm.
end. You like it? No? Yes? If not, we can power through them all on Friday.
Yeah, I think we should cover it on Friday so that we have a episode for Monday, because I already have that in the works. But
I see. Yeah, that
Yeah.
sounds good. Okay. And then the last page is like a quarter page, so we should be good.
mhm.
Um,
And they're the most recent ones, so it'll be easier for us to comment on.
And
Do you
I'll review
remember-
the notes so I'm more
do
informed.
you remember? No, be uninformed. I'm going to put passwords on all of my episodes so you can't look them up.
I still got 2/3, buddy. No.
Shit. Hey, Nick, can you make me an admin on the
Yeah, there you go.
Exofathom Google
Yeah.
Docs?
No. Migrating the files.
So the last one for tonight is the persona, or
Mhm.
the ego, the sort of Jungian mask that we all wear. Just to be meta, this isn't really how I interact with people. I'm not this gregarious or this outgoing. But it's a mask you put on for a show, right? It's like any sort of podcast. So that's sort of the thing that we do every day, though. So like I have a mask for this, I have a mask for a day job, I have a mask for pretty much close to everything, like an infinite sort of mask. And it's how we mold these masks that become important. In the very least, in the beginning, what you should do is separate yourself from your ego, from your mask, dive into your shadow. That is the sides of you that like or that you find issue in other people, because that ends up becoming a material in the mask that you make. And then hopefully you end up reaching the core base, which we haven't touched upon yet, which I hope to touch on in 2022. Your animus or anima, depending on your gender. The contrasexual the contrasexual part of yourself. If you're a male, the feminine qualities, or a female, the male qualities. If you're an attack helicopter, then the anti-attack helicopter of your qualities. Whatever fucking floats your boat.
The surface to air missile qualities.
Yeah, there you go. Whatever that opposite is, you come in touch with that, and then once you become aware of that, you can start to mold multiple personas. I like to think of this as like what really skilled actors and actresses can do in molding their character. But that was I love the Jungian sort of psychology stuff. I'm not that well studied. I'm a little bit studied, but I haven't done like the academic due diligence if I was in a 10-week Jungian psychology class or something like that.
You're reminding
class.
You're reminding me of Michael Scott, where he's like, I'm not really superstitious, but I'm a little stitious.
I'm superstitious. No, I'm extremely Jungian. I've explored a lot of my shadow, and it can be. I run into like Dionysian themes as well. I think Nietzsche and Jung would have got along a lot. I have really elementary formed opinions about it, but I continue my research in it. But it wasn't until very recently that I've learned these terms. I was just doing the research as a ignorant student, I guess, before that. But the persona is something that interests me a lot, especially how it can be formed in real time with multiple people on occasion, because there are times where that becomes a very useful skill. I think everybody's an actor and actress. It just depends on what role you want to play or what you're playing. That's why parents lie to children all the time. That's why probably your politicians lie to your citizens all the time. All that line stuff ends up being a persona sort of thing, persona perspective. But that was a good episode. It's an episode I really liked a lot.
Yeah.
I don't know how y'all felt about it.
I liked it too. I think I recall having conversations about the utility of creating certain masks for certain tasks, and being able to sort of it did, and being able to sort of utilize that art form of creating a persona in order to handle specific aspects of your life. And also kind of talking about maybe the dangers of losing who you truly are within those personas as well. Getting fully caught up. I think we were talking about actors, getting fully caught up in those personas and kind of losing a little bit of the original, quote unquote, the original you.
Yeah, that's where the authenticity comes in, right? If you don't lose your authenticity, then you don't give in to the hyper reality of your persona.
Right.
Just how you connect two episodes 6 months apart.
Hey, that's how you do it. Yeah, no, I enjoyed that episode for sure. And again, we were like, I think there's a delineation in our library where we started getting into more cerebral concepts. I think in the beginning, because I was relying on information more than ideas. And I think that there's like a certain point where we decided to really dive into just kind of abstract ideas. And I think that that's helped the podcast a lot for just creating conversation and letting things be a little bit more organic. So yeah, that's one of the episodes that sticks in my mind as like a more abstract concept episode.
Yeah, I'll hold I have ideas on that. But Ayla, how do you feel about the persona?
I thought that was a really good one too. I think we got a little into Nietzsche, we got into all kinds of different topics, and for whatever reason, the takeaway I have from that episode is hearing Nick quote The Mask.
I wasn't gonna do it.
Yeah, I know, but like I need you to do it now.
We all wear masks, Mr. Ipkiss, metaphorically speaking. Yeah.
Yeah, and that was a good movie. And I thought that part of why it was good was that it spoke to, you know, those in the world who might not be putting their authentic foot forward out of like fear of rejection or whatever it is. And you see this character blossom into like a beautiful flower who's courageous and all that stuff. But all again because of this mask that like gives you that power or courage or trait that you're like wanting to embody. So it was a good chat.
Cool. I know. I like losing the persona myself.
We all wear masks, Mr. Ipkiss. It's just you do it so good nasally.
It was right before that, and I had the idea, and then I like kind of ideas versus information sort of. Yeah, I worry. So I worry that we've ran into a new dark age, the Huxley model of the dystopia, where we have all this information that it beats us over the head, where we've lost our ability to think. And then on a meta level, what I hope this does is like a idea workout session where you're training your brain to, no matter how ridiculous or crazy the idea sounds, as long as you don't take it into belief, like again, like a workout, right? Like you work out with weights, but you don't walk around with the weight everywhere you go, right? You leave the weight in the gym, the exercise room. You take this idea, you can work out with it, you can go hard on the idea, you can get your gains from the idea, and then you leave. And then you use those idea muscles, your brain muscles, for other ideas that can help you out, but where you're not so weighed down with information that you can't think for yourself. And that's what I, on a meta level, that's what I want in my episodes, where we as hosts can use this as a place to train our active thinking, and then we as the listeners can train our active thinking as well, even if it leads to people laughing at the host or people introducing the idea, because then you're at least training the idea of thinking for yourself. And that's far more valuable than any information anybody can drop anywhere.
Yeah, agreed. And I think what I hope that, we can continue to do too is sort of demystify some of these they're not, I mean, gatekeeped ideas. So I have a lot of apprehension sometimes about tackling concepts that are out of my wheelhouse, because I think there's this sort of adherence to the gatekeeper that we in society do nowadays, where it's like, oh, I can't talk on that because I'm not an expert in X, Y, and Z. And so I would hope that, people might look at what we're trying to do here and say, hey, yeah, these guys are probably not as informed as they could be, but they're actually trying to have the conversations. And hopefully that, we're doing it in a way that, while it could be clumsy, it's we're being genuine about it, and we're trying to actually look at these ideas that perhaps we aren't qualified to know the full breadth of, but that shouldn't discourage anybody from diving into them. I think that people shouldn't have to worry about a certain level of certification to start playing with ideas. I think that's a little bit elitist.
I think that's a very good thing to point out. That it's like the layman, right? Like if you took, so you're telling me that you're only allowed to talk about the things that you're educated in. So you take construction workers. The only thing that they're allowed to talk about is construction.
Right.
They're not allowed to talk about anything else that goes on in their life or that goes
Right.
on in the world. So it's a silly thought. Like laymen have conversations all the time. And what ends up where creative out of the box ideas come from, oddly enough, is ignorance. Like maybe the majority of them doesn't work because there's something that the ignorant person doesn't know, but it end up may working because they're disregarding a rule that all of the people that are trained in it just take for granted and never questioned. This
Right.
is like going back to the interstellar thing of where she ends up critiquing the old guy's idea on how to make this all work because he assumes that gravity has to be a given. It's a law that you can't throw away. And she goes, "You're working with one hand tied behind your back. You can throw this thing out."
Yeah.
I mean, you can argue that nowadays it's like time or something, but it holds true with at least some conversations. And it's not like our job relies on knowing quantum physics, right? It's not like we're sitting here trying to build something that might make a black hole or something like that. We're just talking. So you don't have to worry about being wrong. And I think that's a big concern, like you were talking about, is that people don't want to talk about that stuff because they're worried that they might be wrong or that they don't know enough. When the more important thing is simply just to talk about it.
Yeah. Yeah. And to be clumsy about it sometimes, like, again, once we continue this list, I'll tell you exactly where I don't, like I wish that I knew more about the subject. But that's okay because like that's the process of learning and stuff like that. I just think that a lot of people sometimes shy away from ideas because they think that they're not qualified to think about them. And I think that if we can do anything, it'd be to encourage people to buck that sort of preconceived notion, because I think they should be accessible to everybody.
I would agree. Everybody's can talk about everything. It takes, just don't be afraid of, there's some, like, don't be afraid of being wrong. That's the big thing. Like, I'm wrong a lot. I'm happy, like, from a scientific point of view, I'm very happy to be wrong because that means I can pick up something new, redefine my hypothesis, and then move forward with my experiments, which is what you want to do. Like, that's the whole point. But don't be afraid of being wrong, for sure. And that stigma of failing or being wrong is fucking repugnant. Yeah. But I think you're right. Like, that's our end goal, is just helping our audience be able to think and talk about things that are outside of their comfort zone, like we do every week.
Yeah, exactly. Trust me, if you had told me a couple years ago that I'd be putting on presentations about hyperreality, I'd be like, what? What are you talking about? Like, I never even heard about hyperreality a couple years ago. So, like, you can do it. Yeah.
So. Oh, wait till we talk about what we have in store for 2022.
Hey, yeah, exactly.
Ooh.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're going to end it here. We still have many to talk about, but we'll continue this conversation on Friday. Since it is New Year's Eve, I think it'll be apropos for us to just finish out the list and talk about, which episodes we liked, what we might want to expound on in the future, what we want to talk about in 2022. I think that's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be a lot of fun.
And if you're around, join in. Let's, if anybody's watching live, we'll encourage you to comment.
Yeah,
maybe
absolutely.
Crack open some bubbly. Get real loose with it.
Give us some ideas for what you want to see in the future. Certainly.
Hey, have a listening party.
There you go.
Have a listening. If you're with a bunch of people, you're at a party. Throw us on the TV in the background.
We'll send you some stickers.
There's always going to be that one person who just is out of the, who goes to the party all awkward and can't really hang out. That person might be interested.
Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely.
We
There we go.
strongly appeal to that person or the
Yeah.
person who's in the corner who found the dog.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's just like
Hanging out
petting
with
the dog.
We are this Exofathom is the spirit animal of the wallflower. So there you go. But yeah, so thank you so much, you guys, for joining us this episode, and thanks for bringing this to the table, Mike. It's been fun, and I think it's very appropriate for the end of the year to talk about all of the conversations that we've had this year and what we're looking forward to next year. So stay tuned for Friday's episode where we continue this conversation and let you know what we will be covering in the year to come. And thank you again for listening. Thanks to Ayla, of course, as always. And till next time, Cognonauts, you stay out there, and we will catch you on the next Exofathom. Good night.
Peace.
Later.